So since we're talking about the behavioral patterns, and the visitor pattern is the behavioral pattern here, so let's just quickly take a look at the outline of things that is intended to to be solved by the visitor design pattern. So the problem to solve is the mixed hierarchy of nodes, right? In our case, this mixed hierarchy of nodes is this, a maze of floors, elevators, building lobby, parking garage, basement, and so forth and so forth. They're really sort of like, all kinds of things, like a kitchen sink of various types of nodes that we want to visit by our visitors. So so over here it says, in the graphical application, you have the same thing. You have different types of objects, which sometimes are closely related, sometimes not so closely related. But the underlying idea is that there is no common parent class, right? And that's true in our example because if you look at this, floor and elevator do not have a common base class. They're unrelated. Floor is not an elevator, elevator is not a floor. They're absolutely unrelated, completely different interface, completely different agenda and responsibility and so forth, right? So, but how can we uniformly examine or visit the nodes? And that's where things start happening. So an iterator pattern really requires that the collection elements that we visit in a loop like this, right? That they're all related. In our case, they're not related. But we do make them related through a very, very small interface, which is very easy and inexpensive to implement, right? So iterators kind of fall short of solving this problem because, by the way, if we just said, okay, let's forget about this entire design and instead try using the iterators, you'll be surprised how much more code you have to write. Right? We simply don't have time right now, but we could try to experiment with this, and it will be much less distinct, methods which would deal with specific type of interaction between specific type of visitor and specific type of place that is trying to visit. So it'd be much less efficient and much less maintainable solution. All right. So possible solution is to derive all objects from a common base class, add required operations. In our case, this is an interface, right? So we say that in our case, this is this interface, a building element, which becomes our common base. All right. So the better solution use visitor design pattern, which allows to traverse object inside complex structures, keep related operations together by defining them inside the visitor class. And this is what we did with the list of methods inside the iVisitor interface, right? So this is where we kept the related methods together in this specific interface. All right, so it's pretty much the same class diagram. By the way, when you look at these design diagrams, we're human is a creature that sort of like uses visual, or pictorial representation of the world all the time because we have eyes, So, typically when you look at something, your first intention is that, you want to comprehend the entire thing because the overall view of the diagram or just a picture, a photograph or something, right, gives you sort of like an instant access to every part. But at the same time, you should develop this sort of discipline to limit your attention to only individual boxes, because it's really the UML diagrams are not intended. Their first intention is not to give you a quick, a sort of like a quick view of everything in terms of comprehension. You cannot. You still have to interpret every single piece which is placed on this diagram. So the visitor interface, we actually had example of that exactly like this. Right? We'll have some concrete visitors, and that's exactly what we did in our example. Employee, guest, and maintenance visitors we were talking about. Right? So at the same time, there's an element, in our case it was a building element, which accepts the visitor, and therefore you need to implement this interface. If element is also an interface, you need to implement it by the concrete element, which is implementation is extremely simple, because when you call the accept the visitor, it simply delegates the call to the corresponding visitor interface method. So it's just the way we structure this, and so this basically is the outline of the responsibilities of every single element. And so we do accept traversal, but the traversals can be more complicated, because when we say accept visitor, we can have some concrete elements of our configuration forward these acceptance calls to other parts, and so forth. So anyway, this can be used in many different combinations. But this is sort of like wraps up our presentation for the visitor, and perhaps we will, next week we might review the bullets, the highlights for the benefits of visitor once again. But that's pretty much the set of ideas for today. So thank you very much. I'll see you guys next week.